an adolescent.
Yeah,
jerk,
I
you
get,
know?
but I guess like on the other hand is what's the motivation for being a crazed Max Headroom, right? If you're a disgruntled employee, like you just knock them off the air for a little while. I mean, you know, it's the fact that you do this like weird, crazy broadcast that's so disjointed and mind melty. What's the point behind that as well, right? So for me, it's a little bit of a,
that's a
either
good point,
side.
too. Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree with that at all.
I think there's not
I
a
don't
good
know why it
explanation.
wasn't Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Yeah.
It could have been Mickey Mouse, a mask that the guy had been wearing, doing something.
It could have been a Nixon mask. I mean, it could have been an anybody
It
mask.
could have been anybody, and it may have been that they went, oh, hey, I happen to have a Max Headroom mask from Halloween.
Well,
Yeah.
obviously it wasn't a real high-budget film that
Right.
they made. But,
It wasn't. And-
Yeah, but I think that if we wait like another 20, 30 years, somebody's going to
Yeah, it's
die,
just too-
and he'll leave as part of his estate an envelope that's got a confession written in it. Then we'll find out.
I guess so. That's my big argument for the Reddit thread is at least it explains why, because it was kind of mentally addled youths.
That screwy sense of humor. Quirky sense of humor is actually the better way to say it.
With people who are interested in hacking into things, exploring how far they can push that with this weird, crazy. This would be hilarious sense of humor, right? So for me, that's why that one sticks out more than even a disgruntled employee. Not that I'm saying that a disgruntled employee isn't valid, because it's almost just as valid, but that's why I, just to like wrap it up, like the Reddit theory the most.
I will
All right,
run.
fair enough.
You want to hear a fun fact?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. If anybody watches the video, we've already talked about the corrugated piece of metal, and it took me a little bit of time to understand what I was reading. Is that the FBI got involved in the case?
Right, because it's federal.
It's a federal offense,
Right.
And they figured out somehow. They were like, oh, it's got to be in a warehouse, and we got to look for a place that deals in manufactured garage doors. And I kept looking at the piece of metal that was spinning around going, that's not a garage door, you ding-dongs. That's a piece of corrugated metal.
They do make some roll-up doors out of corrugated metal, though.
But I figured it out earlier today, is if you watch that video, when Max is talking at the camera and the piece of metal is spinning back and forth, and you watch the upper right-hand corner of the video, when the square spins, it reveals what's actually behind it. And you can see what looks like a stone or steel column, and then a giant roll-up steel door. A very small part of what looks like a roll-up door.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where they pulled that, because you can see it in the documentation.
I noticed that on the video too, but the problem is that there's a lot of commercial buildings around that have roll-up doors.
You're
Especially in
friggin'
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Of
Oh
course.
yeah, yeah. There's
I don't know where they thought they were going to get with this.
yeah. That's really gonna get you far, dude.
Grab
But
at
it's a fun
straws.
fact. So obviously everybody has paused this at some point and watched the video because they couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Now they're going to have to pause it and look again for that. But this time, please keep the audio off.
Yeah.
You guys got any other theory ideas?
No.
Oh no.
Okay.
No.
All right. Well, if you've got theories of your own, you can always let us know. You can, of course, go to our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. Leave a comment. While you're there, of course, you can listen to and download the episodes directly from the website. Very few people do that. You can actually instead go to a regular place like iTunes and subscribe and download. If you're on iTunes, take the time to leave us a comment and a rating. Those are the things that help other people find us, because that moves us up the charts.
Do it.
Of course, I know a lot of people are using apps. There's a lot of podcast apps out there. There's a lot of streaming websites that we're listed on. You can always find us on one of the ones I know we are on is, of course, Stitcher. So you can find us on Stitcher. Things seem to be good on Stitcher at this point, so
They're
hopefully
finally
we're okay.
fixed? Okay.
It appears to be good.
Thank God.
let's see. Of course, you could find us on Facebook. We got the Facebook page and the Facebook group. Find us, friend us, like us, as Joe likes to find us, friend us, say. You can find us on Twitter. We are Thinking Sideways. So find us on there. We try to use Twitter a little bit, but mostly we just
I've
retweet.
been using it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
cool.
Devin's
Sweet.
using Twitter.
Yeah.
So go ahead and send us a message
Tweet
on
at
Twitter.
me.
Inundate her. So she has not can only do Twitter all day long.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I don't have a job or anything. It's fine.
Exactly. That's why I told him to do it.
Yeah.
You could send us an email.
That would be
An
good.
Actual physical email.
A physical email.
I know. I want somebody to send us a physical email because I've never seen one. They'll probably print a letter and mail it to us from their email. I don't know.
You tape it around a rock and you throw it through our window.
That email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email if, of course, you did the Max Headroom interruption, you have ideas, you have thoughts, story suggestions, anything like that. We love to field them all, so go ahead and send this all to us. And I think that's all the ways that you can get a hold of us. If you find a new one, let us know. That having been said, we have gone on long enough, and I think it's time to finish this one up.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so. Ta-ta.
Bye, everybody.
Ride the wave.
Groovy.
This episode of Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by Kitten Mittens. One size fits all. Instead, it's brought to you by CrimeCon. That's right, CrimeCon 2018. We're gonna be there. We really want to meet you and see you and provide you with amazing programming and I don't know, whatever. Anyway, it's in Nashville this year, and if you want tickets, please go to crimecon.com and use the promo code SIDEWAYS for 10% off your purchase, which is amazing. Good. It's a good deal. And we really look forward to seeing you guys there. I know it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. I really want to meet you guys and have fun with you guys. Crimecon.com, promo code SIDEWAYS.
Thinking sideways. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I'm Joe, joined as always by
Devin.
and
Steve.
this week it's time for another fascinating mystery. We're going to talk about what they call in the Philippines the Michael Myring mystery. Michael Myring was a shadowy person, and nobody knows exactly what he was, because he claimed to be a treasure hunter. Some people thought he might have been something else, like maybe a terrorist or a CIA operative. We'll tell you everything you need to know, and you can make up your own mind. Oh, and by the way, I want a quick aside. I want to thank Landon, who suggested this. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you are a dude, by the way. But anyway, but thanks, Landon. So let me start from the beginning here. The date was May 16th, 2002. So yeah, this is an oldie, turn of the century story. You remember the turn of the century?
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
things were a lot different. Cars looked a little different.
They did.
Hair was longer or maybe shorter, I don't remember.
Both.
Was it both? Yeah, cell phones were
Hair was
bigger.
different.
Yeah, hair was different. Cell phones. Remember cell
Yeah.
phones? Yeah, they were big.
Literally, they were big.
They were.
They did start out kind of big. Okay, so May 16, 2002, there was an explosion in room 305 at the Evergreen Hotel in Davao, Mindanao, the Philippines. So as you know, Mindanao is that big island at the south end of the archipelago that is the Philippines. And Davao was a big city there. And there had been other terrorist bombings which had recently been taking place across the Philippines. And there was a big one just 3 weeks before that killed 15 people, wounded 55. So a lot of bombing going on. People are a little bit on edge. So naturally,
Understandably.
Yeah, understandably. So there's an explosion in room 305 at the hotel. It was occupied by a man named Michael Terrence Myring, who was an American oncologist. That's a cancer doctor, for those who don't know. He'd been a regular guest at this hotel for the past 8 to 10 years. He'd been spending a lot of time in the Philippines since the early 1990s. And on his most recent visit, he checked into the Evergreen Hotel December 14th, 2001, several months before.
It's like 6 months before, right?
Yeah,
Almost.
4 months before, or I guess 6 months. Yeah, you're
Well,
right.
He seemed to
5.
frequent the same hotels. There was, I
did.
think it was like 3 different hotels that he liked to stay at.
Yeah, and
depending on where he was.
Yeah, and he spent like somewhere from 6 to 8 months a year in the Philippines. So he was a regular at these places.
I'm surprised he didn't try to find like timeshares
I was just gonna say
something.
that.
I was gonna say, why
or
not?
even just buy a house.
Why
I bet.
not? Yeah, rent an apartment. You know?
Yeah, for the exchange rate, from what I know, the exchange rate in the Philippines, like it doesn't take very much American dollars to live like a king
Yeah.
in the Philippines, so I don't know why.
Built-in housekeeping.
I mean, you could hire a housekeeper for pretty cheap there.
I don't know. I'm guessing maybe he just decided it was easier not to. I have no
Maybe.
idea why he was doing it this
Yeah.
way.
He might have been a commitment phobe.
Fair
Aha.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, or he might have been one of these people, like my dad was kind of this way, who just didn't want to buy into real estate because he was sure the bubble was going to burst. My dad was totally right about that. He was just off by several decades.
Sure.
It did happen. It did happen.
I mean, if you maintain that for long enough, it will eventually be true.
Oh, it's totally true. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, whatever the reasons, he was staying at this hotel. So, of course, there'd been a big kaboom. The police paramedics show up. They found that Myring was pretty mangled. His legs were really badly mangled. Unfortunately, they had to be amputated.
So they were amputated.
they
Because some
were.
of the stories just talk about how he was
Got
wounded and
messed
burned.
up. Yeah, the one version I read that only one leg was amputated, but
Okay.
most of the more authoritative ones, like in the Manila Times, etc., said both legs were amputated.
Okay.
So we'll go with that.
All right, I just want to clarify because I was never sure.
No, it is hard to tell. Yeah.
And was it just his legs that were injured, or was the rest of his body injured?
Oh, he got some big third-degree burns
Okay.
over a lot of the rest of his body.
So
too.
pretty much what you would expect by somebody being caught off guard by their room exploding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So he was taken to the Davao Doctors Hospital, which is where his legs were amputated. But before he lost consciousness, he told police that somebody had lobbed a grenade into his room. But then later on, when the police bomb experts took a close look at the scene, well, the evidence to them looked like the blast was from a bomb and not a grenade. And Myring had 2 metal boxes that he kept in his room, and it looked like the bomb had actually been inside one of those boxes. So, curious, right? And, well, here's where the story thickens a little bit. While Myring was in the hospital in Davao, some FBI agents came by to ask him some questions. This is where it gets controversial. According to some sources, local police who were there guarding Myring tried to stop the FBI from getting into his room, but the FBI guys apparently were kind of bullying, and they just basically insisted on going in and talking to him. And then they took Myring out of the hospital, flew him to another hospital in Manila, which is, of course, at the far other end of the Philippines.
Of course.
Of course, yeah. And then after, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly when this happened, Myring left the country. Apparently, according to some people, the FBI spirited Myring out of the Philippines and back to the U.S. Apparently, he was taken to San Diego, ostensibly, to quote a famous podcaster person. It was for more advanced treatments than what he could get in the Philippines.
So here's okay, when I read this stuff about this, and I was reading this stuff that, oh gosh, which U.S. government organization, I want to say it's the State Department, but it probably isn't, whoever it was, they were like, oh yeah, no, they went there with police officers, local police officers in tow to comply with the rules. Like they, their accounting of it is that they followed the book and the locals were with them and totally fine with it.
That is what the U.S. government says, as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of conflicting accounts in this one. I think that probably they did obey the rules. The FBI says that they had a liaison with the Philippine National Police. They totally cooperated and coordinated with them. So that's how they put it.
Not to disparage the Philippine police.
Yeah.
Is something you always say before you can. In my talkings with people from the Philippines, which I've had extensive talkings with people from the Philippines, most of their citizens generally feel like the police are pretty corrupt, and it doesn't take very much to get them to do what you want. So, whether or not the FBI or, the U.S. officials were complying, or they had paid them off, or maybe they hadn't paid them off, and so the police were like, hey, you didn't
What the
follow
news?
protocol.
Uh-huh.
You didn't pay us off. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then, later reported that they had been done without their consent.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much to not know about it.
Yeah, there is. It's just there's once again something to be said for impartial, law-abiding law enforcement.
And I'll just add that if I had gotten my legs blown off and third-degree burns all over my body in a foreign country, I'd be super thankful for my government coming and taking me home.
yeah, that's a good point.
So I don't know.
It's the whole question here is not so much that they did it, but why they did it. Yeah, that's
You
the
could
big
have asked
question.
for it.
Yeah, it might have been. But back to the bomb scene, it looked like the bomb, according to the Philippine police, was most likely an improvised type. Initially, they concluded dynamite, but then after that, they decided it was some other higher tech explosive,
Like ammonium nitrate?
which had ammonium nitrate in it. They found traces of ammonium nitrate.
Isn't that the same thing that was in Oklahoma City? Isn't that
Yeah,
the same kind of bomb,
that was a
essentially?
component, yeah,
It's a fertilizer bomb for
Yeah, I mean that's one way
simplest terms.
That's one way to get your ammonium nitrate. You don't have to use fertilizer
Right.
like they did there. You can actually get more purified versions of it. But yeah, you combine your ammonium nitrate with some fuel oil, and voila, you've got a nice unstable explosive.
Well, my
Yeah.
reason for saying it was kind of like I was thinking that it had to be something akin to a fertilizer bomb is he is in the Philippines, and fertilizer is probably easy to get a hold of.
Oh, sure.
The higher tech stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah, and there are, and this is the whole range. You can improvise something with fertilizer and diesel, or there's some more higher tech stuff that also uses ammonium nitrate. Same kind of similar thing, but it's
true.
a more refined process and it's a better explosive. But but as far as what he had there, was it improvised or was it high tech stuff? I'm not totally sure. But of course, if Myring did have himself a bomb, which it appeared that he did, that's illegal in the Philippines even. So that made him kind of a wanted man. Of course, by this point, he's out of the Philippines. They wanted him back. They actually filed charges against him in the Philippines, but the U.S. government did nothing to return him. And instead, Myring lives out the rest of his days here in the U.S., maybe in his hometown of Calamasa, California, although there was one report that he'd been seen in Texas. But it doesn't really matter because apparently he's died since. I think he died in 2012. Because I believe he was about 66 when this bombing happened, so 76, plus take off a couple of years for having your body burned and your legs blown off, so that's not outrageous. The controversy didn't die. 2 weeks after the bombing, the mayor of Davao, Rodrigo Duterte,
A guy who likes to scream.
he's kind of bombastic, I would say, is the one way of putting it. He went
He
public.
reminds me of another certain politician in our country.
A little bit, but a lot worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna make judgments.
Yeah, but he went public and blasted the U.S. government for taking Myring out of the country. He accused the CIA of conducting a false flag operation in the Philippines.
Explain to folks what's a false flag operation.
Yeah, a false flag is where you commit usually some sort of a crime or an operation, but you make it look like some other country has done it. So the idea is here would be like, well, okay, we'll plant some bombs, we'll blame it on some Muslim separatist group, and then if we do that, then public opinion in the Philippines will turn against these guys, and then the national government will adopt a policy that's more anti-Muslim, which is what
Engineering
we
a
want.
situation against these people. I got it. Okay.
Yeah. And so in this telling, Myring was an agent of the CIA. He was running this operation, which is why the U.S. got him out of the country so quickly. Duterte was very angry about this situation. He threatened unspecified violence towards the FBI if they ever came back to Davao again.
Ooh.
I know. That's the kind of guy he is. Actually, he actually claims to have killed people in his drug war. This is the same guy. He's obviously president of the Philippines today.
Yes.
If you don't know that. He does claim in the past to have actually summarily executed people who were caught with drugs.
Oh yeah, no,
They
I can't remember who it is. Some human rights group is totally in arms because you get caught with drugs. Essentially, they're just taking you out, and the number of deaths. Capital punishment style deaths had just skyrocketed once he came into office.
Oh yeah, well,
Like to an absurd rate.
Well, it began long before he was president. I mean, when he was mayor of Davao, he cleaned up, quote unquote, the situation down there, and the same thing happened. There were what they call death squads, and at least there were some accusations that there were death squads killing people outright all over the place there. And then apparently the Philippine people liked his style enough that they went ahead and made him president. So whatever, they're entitled to elect whoever they want.
Yeah.
To. But this might explain why U.S.-Philippines relations have gone downhill. If this particular incident is what soured Duterte so much on the United States and our relationship with the Philippines. I'm not sure if it is or not. Maybe he was already kind of anti-American, and this was just an excuse. I don't know. And I don't know when he made this speech. This was May 30th, 2002, just 2 weeks after the explosion. I don't know if he had any special knowledge of the situation or if he'd just been reading the newspapers like everybody else, but he was mad. I mean, you read that article, right?
Yeah.
Did he strike you as angry?
He strikes me as angry constantly.
Well, there's that.
That's why I said that earlier.
Yeah.
He's
that
always mad.
Yeah, but that's why this is still controversial and still a mystery, because who exactly was Michael Meyering and just what exactly was he up to? So that's what we're going to figure out here. Ostensibly, there goes that
there
word
it is again.
I know. He was a citizen of South Africa who emigrated to the U.S. and was naturalized towards the end of the apartheid era. As I said before, he was an oncologist.
He was Caucasian?
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
And supposedly he was affiliated with the African National Congress, although I'm not too sure about that. I mean, in this story you read that he was affiliated with all kinds of groups, as I'm sure you're aware. Very disparate groups, I would say. He's also been accused of being affiliated with another group of people who were like white supremacists and Nazis back in the U.S., which is kind of antithetical to the whole African National Congress thing, when you think about it. But there is one story that was told by a friend of his named David Hawthorne, who said that Meyering told him once that he'd given a box of old U.S. federal notes to the South African government after apartheid. So this is after Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa. Mm-hmm. He made them a gift of this box of notes had, according to Meyering, $500 million in it.
Wow.
I know, a lot of money. That's old banknotes. I don't know how big the denominations were. I did a little checking. And I know back in the day, they used to print bills as large as $10,000 in denominations.
Wait, where's Meyering saying he got the money from?
Well, that's a little hazy. This is, he's again a treasure hunter.
Because I see you've got information here about dates and types of bills, and so I'm trying to figure out, it's not like he just went down to the bank and made a cash withdrawal.
No,
Okay.
not at all. These were old banknotes, of course. I'm not sure what the biggest denomination is today. Is it 500? They're still making a $500 bill, right?
I'm not sure. I don't use them very often.
Yeah, none of us are rich enough to know that.
No, I know.
Let me just open my wallet.
I know it's, but again, back in the day, they used to make them a lot bigger.
Oh, yeah.
$10,000.
Yeah, $10,000 was the biggest one. Yeah. So, assuming that this box with $500 million in it was in $10,000 denominations, my back of the envelope calculation is that would be 110 pounds.
Okay.
So that's a lot of bucks, and of course, if it's
smaller denominations, it becomes a pallet full.
Yeah, I mean, my calculation is that if it was $100 bills, it would weigh a little over a ton. So heavy box. But as for where he got these, well, this is the Philippines. Yamashita's gold and all that stuff.
Hey, you pronounced it right this time.
I know. But this box was one of 12, which would mean about $6 billion. And again, as you asked, where did he get it? Well, it could have been from ships. I mean, because Meyering, of course, was looking for Yamashita's gold, and if what he said about those 12 boxes of cash is true, then it sounds like he found part of it, because as we all know, the Japanese in World War II and before World War II were looting East Asia of everything. They would go to the banks and, I'm sure, carry away all the banknotes. Mm-hmm. Everybody's jewelry, their silver candelabra, and their rings, their gold coins, silver coins, everything, jewels. And that was Yamashita's gold, and supposedly just about all of it wound up in the Philippines. And
we've actually covered that story.
We talked about this story,
many years ago, actually.
It was a while back. It was a couple of years ago. Yeah. And of course, if you listen to that episode, as you know, towards the end of the war, there was some effort to transport all that stuff back to Japan, because it did look like the Philippines were going to fall to the Allies, and so it had to be transported back to Japan. So what to send it on? Well, ships and submarines, of course. And there are apparently, around Mindanao, there are a lot of sunken ships and submarines. So it's kind of worth taking a look at them, I suppose. So that might be where he found it. If they've got a ship or something that's got these crates of cash, and he's found this thing and salvaged these crates, okay, that could be one potential source of it. Or maybe he was just BSing. I don't know. It could be that, too. In fact, I'm kind of betting on that. But
yeah. That'd have to be sealed really well to have survived underwater.
Not necessarily. My understanding about the way things work is underwater is that you can leave it down there as long as you want. It's the process when you bring it back to the surface. You got to manage that process kind of carefully,
and
or
that
it
process
oxidizes
of
and deteriorates
desalinization
quickly. Yeah.
and separation and drying is time consuming
It has to be
and
done right.
expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise it turns to dust.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm curious about that part. But
Well, it might have been something else too. I mean, there's not just on ships. It could have been buried in a cave somewhere.
okay.
Yeah, it also could have explained why maybe he knew where it was. He had, a friend who was guarding it, lived on a boat above it or something like that. He brought, one box up at a time.
Yeah, and
It was a very
carefully
slow
dried it out.
process. It would explain why he was staying at kind of a crappy hotel
He
because he
still
didn't
doesn't have
actually
access
have the
to all his
money
money,
yet,
yeah.
know.
Okay. I
Yeah.
get behind that.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. But that's so far the only treasure we know for sure that he found, and we're pretty sure he didn't actually find that either. He also is supposedly partnered up with the Manila-based group of people. You see a lot of this in this story. There's this shadowy group of people who aren't exactly named, and you don't exactly find out. But these are the ones that I said had links to this white supremacist group back in the U.S. and also to the neo-Nazi Party of the United States. And I'm not sure why he joined up with these people. It might be he needed capital. Or maybe they just had information they needed, or maybe they just were like the mob and they just muscled in on the operation.
Maybe they were the only ones who know how to desalinate money.
It could be that too. They might have had some skills that he
They've
needed.
got a lot of experience.
Well, there was another thing. There was some messages between him and this demolition expert, where the demolition expert was talking about them handling this situation he described. Which sounds to me like the guy was talking about maybe dealing with unexploded ordnance. Which, if you're salvaging a warship that's sunken, there's probably going to be some bombs and artillery shells and stuff like that on board that ship.
Hell, to this day, they're still finding mines in Britain in backyards that have been buried.
Oh, yeah.
Or not mines, but
bombs.
bombs.
Yeah, unexploded bombs. Oh, yeah. They find them all the time. I mean, still. And so you got to be real careful with that stuff, obviously. According to the same guy I mentioned, David Hawthorne, before, was a friend of Meyring's. Meyring was afraid of his new partners, these shadowy Manila-based people. He said to Hawthorne that his life was in danger, and that's Meyring's life, and that it had something to do with the treasure. Kind of vague stuff. But so the question, of course, is why didn't he leave the country? Well, apparently he wanted to get his treasure before he left the country, maybe?
Me too.
I don't know. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I suppose I'd risk my life for that kind of cash. I mean, why not?
I might, yeah.
I probably would. Or I'd risk somebody's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I know you would. That's okay. I don't mind. But,
It doesn't make sense, though.
What's that?
This whole he's recovering all of this treasure because why was he giving it away?
Well, that's it. I mean, why would you, if you've only recovered one crate of cash and you turn around and you give it to Nelson Mandela, I'm sorry, that's not
who was a great guy, by the way, and deserved it, but if it's all your money, your operating capital, that's a problem.
Does not make a lot of sense to me either. I'm sorry, I'm a selfish guy. I would keep it for me. Of course, maybe it was a bad batch, oops, we brought this up wrong, and it's all turned to crap, so I'm going to generously give it to somebody else. Maybe that's
a tax deduction.
Yeah, look at all this. Yeah. So that's what he's supposedly doing. He's looking for treasure, and came back, like I said, to Davao in mid-December 2001. And as I said before, he always stayed at the Evergreen Hotel. When he showed up the last time I checked in, he brought these 2 large metal boxes with him.
When we're talking large...
I don't know how large.
Bigger than a bread box?
A little bigger than a bread box, I think, but smaller than a refrigerator.
Still big enough or small enough that somebody could carry it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, okay. they were. I got the impression that he kept files in there, like information on his.
I was going to say,
like banker's boxes.
Yeah, about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
thinking about that size.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'd never seen a picture of them, so I can't tell you. Sure. Actually, they kind of got blown up anyway. So yeah, but these were padlocked, and they were. He told 3 different hotel employees that the boxes should not be touched, not at all. And apparently, these must have been the room cleaners. And apparently, he said that to them repeatedly. He said, hey, whatever you do, don't touch those boxes. Don't even touch them. And actually, I think that this is not a rumor because these 3 people actually signed affidavits stating this. So, and that's probably one of the few solid pieces of information we've got to work with here. So there's something about them boxes that was important. Other than that, we don't know much about what he was doing. Meyring was busted about a week before the bomb went off for passing counterfeit U.S. cash. And as a result of this, his hotel room was searched by police. And in another telling of the story, Philippine intelligence had an eye on him because they were suspicious because he kept bringing in these metal boxes into his hotel. So
there were a lot more.
I don't know if he was bringing them and then taking them out and bringing them back or whatever.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They were like
Yeah.
the equivalent of his briefcases.
Sure.
Yeah, he didn't have, I don't think, more than 2 at a time. They were probably the same ones, but maybe he was swapping them. But
But again, we don't know that this is true.
No.
Either the part about his arrest or them keeping an eye
the
on
part
him.
about him getting caught with the counterfeits and the police coming by and looking over his place apparently is true. That seems to be documented, but I'm not 100% even sure about even that.
All right.
And then I said Duterte did complain about the search because apparently Michael Myring was not totally cooperative when the police showed up to search his room.
Most people aren't, though.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be.
Well, yeah. Well, they searched his room. Apparently, they didn't find the steel boxes, so he must have moved them. He might have moved into the bathroom because apparently he wouldn't let the police search the bathroom. When the police expressed an interest in the bathroom, he said, "No, you can't go in there. It's out of order."
I've got a red North Face bag in there.
Yeah, exactly. With a corpse in it, and
You can't go in.
yeah, I love
I
it.
had chili last night. You don't want to go in there.
Yeah.
It's out of order.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. Apparently that, or maybe he slipped him some money. I don't know, but I do know where I'm keeping my murder weapons and all my contraband. I'm keeping it in my bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. At least if I'm living in the Philippines. And as we all know, about a week after that, he was nearly killed in that explosion in his room. Some of the things they found in the wreckage, besides bits and pieces of the bomb, they also found some pieces of old U.S. currency, kind of like those old banknotes we were talking about. So,
Now, was there all? This is where I want to ask a question about counterfeit money, because I thought that counterfeit cash or remnants of counterfeit cash had also been found in the room post-explosion. Am I correct in that, or am I wrong?
there are some accounts about that. Yeah,
Okay.
it was remnants of counterfeit
Okay, again,
cash.
the reporting on this one is just so slapdash.
They also found an ID card from the Moro National Liberation Front. I'm sure you've heard of those guys.
What
Of
if we
course.
haven't?
Well, if you haven't, the MNLF is a group they're part of the Muslim separatist movement in the Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're as a group that's part of the Muslim separatist movement in the Philippines. This ID card had Michael Myring's name and photograph on it, along with the birth date, September 17th, 1935, which would make him about 66 when he got blown up. And what was he doing with that card, you ask? Oh, well, I don't know.
Well, my question is, why do they even make ID cards?
That I don't know either. That's a good question.
Isn't it kind of like classified as a terrorist organization?
Well, they
No.
they weren't.
They weren't covert.
Yeah, they weren't as extreme as some of the other organizations. Like there's a few others, like another Abu Sayyaf is another group that's sort of advocating for a separate Muslim state in the Philippines, and they are classified as a terrorist organization because
Okay.
well, they use a lot of violence for one thing.
Yeah.
and they're advocating actual separatism and a Sharia state and everything.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
acronyms,
Yeah.
things in this story. So
Oh, there
sorry,
kind of
I
are.
didn't mean to say that they were terrorists, but
No.
I still don't understand necessarily why.
Yeah, actually the government signed a peace agreement with the separatists in I think 1996,
Yeah.
and they essentially gave them some limited regional autonomy,
I see. Okay.
and
Okay.
so they were more or less.
It was probably the equivalent of, kind of like a passport to get into their territory.
Well, it
Gotcha.
might have been a way to be in the territory at least unmolested. Travel. This certifies that the local government knows you're there and it's okay. you
Yeah,
know.
their equivalent of the TSA has said, this guy's fine, he's good, let him in and out as he pleases.
That could be what it was. Man, I'm not really sure. Or he
Okay.
could have just gone down to the local Quickie Mart and got himself a fake ID.
Gotcha.
I don't know. But also, besides this did raise a few eyebrows, of course, but apparently this came out in the press. Apparently Myring had some shady connections to some other groups as well. According to the Manila Times, he had ties with, of course, all sorts of government officials in Mindanao, which is where Davao is, of course, and also the Philippine National Police, which are kind of like their FBI, I guess, and of course the MNLF, as I said, but also the MILF, the MILF, the MILF, which is the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. They're like the MNLF, but they're actually more religious versus secular, and of course Abu Sayyaf, as I said, who are hardcore. These guys are affiliated with ISIS. They're
Okay.
considered the Filipino chapter of ISIS. And then, of course, also the New People's Army, which is the communist guys, the communist insurgency in the Philippines. So all these different things. It's like alphabet soup. It's like
I would have never guessed that the Philippines was such a hotbed of activity with all these different organizations fighting for control.
Yeah, it kind of is, and
it feels very 1950s, 1960s to me with all of these groups battling for control.
Well, aren't the Philippines pretty strategic? They're like a pretty good spot to be if you want to do anything in the world, right?
Yeah, they kind of are. They're down there close to all the shipping lanes and, you know, South and East Asia and all these things. That's why we have this relationship with them. I mean, it's